Hello, I'm Mark from Trail Buddy. Today we're going to be talking about engine swaps and thinking outside the CT70 chassis. So this one we have here is my 1965 Honda S65. So there are a lot of different chassis that Honda made that utilize that same CT70, we'll call it, style motor, just because that's what we have reference to and building the Trail 70s here at Trail Buddy. But I've also built a bunch of other little fun toys using our aftermarket engine. So the one you see right here is a really early version that we used to import. I think I built this bike in 2009 or so. I bought the chassis at AMA Vintage Days. It was just a big mess. It was a ratted out bike, but I think this engine even had an old school pushrod Honda motor. But when you're looking at this stuff, you really want to just check out if it's a uses that same bolt pattern as the Trail 70. So the 50cc models up to I think the 90cc all use that same pattern here on the back on where it mounts. So like this one was a pretty cool build, but I had to do a lot of unique things to make it work. And that's what I think made it a lot of fun. So this frame has our wire harness in it, our simple harness. It also has, I utilize the ignition key that we carry, fit right in. I had to move the harness back a little bit, but I didn't have to really cut anything up. I'm utilizing our handlebar controller assembly, and I had to cut the pigtail and make my own custom one to work with this original bulb here. But I did change everything over to 12-volt bulbs, and it was kind of a trick finding a carburetor and an exhaust system that worked. So I came up with my own custom straight pipe. Again, I bought the pipe at Vintage Days. I had to alter and make my own little header, so I took an old 70 exhaust that we had that was all rusted out. I cut the end off where it mounts to the head, and then welded on my own little adapter. But I didn't have to alter anything on the frame. The engine bolted right in. I had to play around with the exhaust. I think I put the original S65 foot peg assembly on there because I believe it fit. This engine here is a 125, and it's one of our earlier clutch models, so the casing is like really small or narrow. So that one you can get away with quite a bit. But new tires, new tubes, and utilizing all of our parts and pieces. Another vehicle thinking outside the CT70 frame is my TRX70 here that I built with our 125cc electric start semi-automatic motor. So this one was a really fun build too. Everything was restored back to original, except for the motor, and I had to alter the exhaust quite a bit. But again, this one still fits in with the bolt pattern. It clears the head, and the intake and the carburetor still fit on this guy. So this is a really cool one to be heading down you don't have to balance as much on a quad, obviously, but different things to build with the motors is a good example right here. So we'll get a couple good close-ups of the mods we had to do to actually get this guy to fit in here. So I didn't have to cut the frame. I didn't have to do anything major other than the exhaust system. Now this one also uses our simple harness for the wiring. I ended up just taking the harness apart out of the loom and just gutting out everything that I didn't want because I really wanted to make it pretty simple. But it's got our running light, we've got a headlight, electric start, high beam, low beam, and throttle. I had to do a little bit of altering to get the throttle to work with the carburetor, but other than that, bolted right in. So here you can see I got the engine bolted right into the pattern. Now the alterations I had to do is I had to space down this foot peg assembly to clear the transmission. And then this exhaust system here, from here back is original. From here up are two different bends of an exhaust here. So I used the header from an old worn out exhaust that we had laying around the shop. So I needed the bend to kind of clear the case. Again, these motors are quite a bit wider than the original motor. So pretty much if you had anything that was running close to it, that's where you had to alter. The foot pegs again were just spaced down. And, you know, we could still fit the intake in the carburetor here. And it had made perfect room for the electric starter. Now, obviously, I can't use the kick starter here because it'd be in the way of the fender, but here's a couple of other details close of how you can mount our aftermarket engines and other chassis. So for the shifting side, I did have to alter the shifter. But what I did is I ended up cutting it here and then adding a little over 2 inches just to space it up, because this foot peg assembly is quite a bit different than the aftermarket ones that we sell. Would be more out here. So with the foot peg moved forward, I had to give myself a lot more room for my toe to fit. So I cut it, welded in a piece of metal all the way around, painted it up good. And then also here you can see where the choke just fits. So there are different, we really only have one style of intake that we have in stock, but there are a bunch of different styles out there with different turns. We do have an adapter that you can use, but now this bolts in, but I still want to stress that there's still a lot of little mods that you have to do. So if you like doing tinkering and making a bunch of little custom stuff, this is awesome to do. The benefits of going through all the work to add the aftermarket engine is you get a lot of newer technology. So you get the CDI, you get the electric start, you really get a good strong headlight, taillight, and it just makes it and obviously the higher CCs for adults versus younger kids, lower weight. And you know, the electric start's really kind of nice. I don't want to say that I'm getting lazier in my old age. I'm just enjoying the refinements of technology, we'll call it. But it really turns it into a whole different kind of machine. So you got all those different chassis other than Trail 70s that you can go have fun with. We'll give it a fire here. Ooh, pursed like a kitten. So that makes it really nice with a newer motor, boy. You don't have to worry about, as long as you keep the battery charged in this. But I got the custom bracket in the back where I've got the larger 12-volt battery, so this seems to hold the charge pretty good. We'll take it for a spin. So there's tons of options out there for putting aftermarket engines in a bunch of different chassis. It really makes this bike a lot of fun. I have a original version of this too with the 70cc engine, and it's fun for kids. For me, it works a little bit moving me around. So there's one more bike we want to show that it's got that same aftermarket engine. Again, it'll be an older version up, but we'll get that one out and we'll show that one too. So the last bike we're gonna go over, thinking outside the Trail 70 frame for our engine swaps, is this one here. Is probably the more crazy ones. It's got all kinds of different parts mix mash. So it originally started life as an SL70. So this one's a little tougher to get that engine in, but again, same principle here. The bolt pattern works the same on the rear, holds the motor. Sprockets are always in the right spot. We used our simple wire harness for it. Our ignition key, we got our on-off reserve valve, carburetor. These have pretty much got all of our core components for the engine to make it run. So as long as you can fit those parts in there, I think from that SL or the S65 we looked at earlier, I didn't even have to cut the harness. I just had to move it in a different position that it would have been in a Trail 70. This one's cut down quite a bit, but we still have our headlight, tail light, got our controls here. I think this one we've got a K&S style controller on it. I think it's got a ATC gas tank. So it's got all kinds, got pit bike, front suspension and rear adjustable suspension. But so you can, sky's the limit on what you can do. This was my dad's build from a couple years back. He always called it his rat bike. But it's definitely a menagerie of parts and pieces. But showcases again too what different chassis that you can have fun with. You know, bring them to an adult level to where you can actually, it makes it a totally different bike. Same kind of thing when you get on a Trail 70 after you swap the motor out. Ride's totally different. Makes it a fun new machine. So I'd get out there and start building. Look for different chassis. Again, as long as it fits the smaller CC engine. Now you can do little brackets like for the 90s, the Trail 90s. You got to do a little adapter bracket to make it fit the chassis, but you can make that kind of stuff work. So I'd get out there, find stuff, and check us out on mytrailbuddy.com.